Trust is a fragile thing. It builds slowly, layer by layer, but when it breaks, it shatters like glass. You never expect the people closest to you to be the ones holding the hammer. I thought I had everything figured out. A husband I loved, a best friend I trusted with my life, and a home filled with laughter. But then, he left for a business trip, and I found something in her purse that changed everything. It started innocently enough. A Thursday morning, quiet and cool, just before the leaves began to change for fall. My husband, Daniel, was packing for his 3-day work trip to Chicago. He moved with the usual efficiency, polished shoes, button-down shirts, and the same leather carry-on he always used. "I'll be back Sunday night," he said, leaning in to kiss me on the forehead. "Don't burn the house down without me." I laughed and swatted his arm. "Maybe I'll redecorate and turn your office into a yoga studio." He smirked, gave me one last kiss, and walked out the door. The house felt emptier than I expected. I'm used to being alone. Daniel's job often has him flying across the country for conferences or meetings, but something about this time felt different. It wasn't just the silence. It was something heavier, more intangible. A weird sense I couldn't shake, like walking into a room where someone had just been talking about you. But I brushed it off. Friday rolled in quietly. My best friend, Maddie, came over that afternoon. We'd known each other since college, roommates our sophomore year, inseparable ever since. She was the kind of friend who knew the names of all my exes, my food allergies, and my deepest fears. I never once thought to question her loyalty. She brought wine, Rose, my favorite, and we sat in the living room, talking about everything and nothing. The conversation drifted from old coworkers to my plans to start painting again. And then she asked, too casually, "So, where did Daniel say he was going again?" "Chicago," I replied, taking another sip of wine. "For that digital marketing summit thing." She nodded slowly, almost as if she were trying to remember something. But the moment passed, and we moved on to binge-watching a trashy reality show and laughing until we cried. It was a good night, at least it was supposed to be. The next morning, Saturday, I woke to Maddie making pancakes in the kitchen. She had stayed over on the couch, something we did from time to time when wine flowed too freely. The smell of batter and maple syrup filled the air. I rubbed the sleep from my eyes and padded into the kitchen. "You're spoiling me," I said, smiling. Maddie looked up from the stove, flashing her bright, toothy grin. "Someone's got to take care of you while your man's off networking and pretending to be important." We laughed, but that strange weight in my stomach tightened just a little. I tried to ignore it. After breakfast, she went upstairs to take a shower while I cleaned up. Her purse was sitting on the counter next to the fridge. I reached to move it out of the way so I could wipe down the surface beneath, and that's when it happened. The purse tipped slightly, and something slid out from the unzipped top pocket. It was a credit card. Not just any card, Daniel's card. I recognized it instantly. He always carried that matte black business card with the little scratch mark near the chip from where it rubbed against his keys. My hand froze mid-reach. There was no logical reason for that card to be in Maddie's purse. None. I stared at it for a full 10 seconds, heart pounding in my ears. Every nerve in my body suddenly felt electrified. My breath caught, shallow and uneven. I could hear the shower still running upstairs. In a slow, trembling motion, I picked up the card and stared at the name embossed on the front. Daniel Weston. There it was, clear as day. My mind began spinning. 1,000 possible explanations rushed through me. None of them made sense. Maybe she found it somewhere? Maybe he left it at the house? But even then, why was it in her purse? I placed it back exactly where it had fallen and zipped the purse shut. My fingers were shaking. I felt sick. I knew I needed answers, but confrontation wasn't my strong suit. Not without evidence, at least. I walked out of the kitchen and sat on the couch, pretending nothing had happened. Maddie came down 10 minutes later, hair still wet, wrapped in a towel. "You okay?" she asked, eyes narrowing. "You look pale." "I'm just a little tired," I lied. "Didn't sleep well." She shrugged, grabbed her purse, his card inside it, and said she had to run some errands. I nodded and smiled weakly. She left, humming as she walked out the door. The second the door closed, I lost it. My chest heaved. My hands trembled. I paced the kitchen floor in circles, whispering to myself, trying to make sense of it all. I pulled out my phone and checked Daniel's location through Find My iPhone, something we both used for safety when he traveled. He was in Chicago, at least according to his phone. That didn't make me feel better. In fact, it made it worse. If he was truly in Chicago, how did his card end up in Maddie's purse? My mind kept circling back to the unspoken moments. The hesitation in Maddie's voice when she asked where Daniel had gone. The too casual grin. The familiarity she carried in my home when he wasn't around. Were they? No. I refused to believe that. Couldn't. Maddie had been my maid of honor. She helped me pick out my wedding dress. She threw me a bachelorette party. She knew how much I loved him. She cried at our vows. But maybe that was all an act. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I didn't eat. I didn't speak. I sat on the couch, staring at the door, waiting for answers I didn't have the courage to ask. I didn't sleep that night. At 2 a.m., I got up and poured myself a glass of water, my eyes bloodshot and dry. That's when I made the decision. I would get answers, carefully, quietly, because if what I feared was true, I wasn't just dealing with betrayal. I was dealing with a lie that had been living in my home, smiling in my face, for years. Sunday morning arrived, overcast and dull, as though even the weather could feel the shift in my world. I hadn't slept, and the cold light filtering through the curtains only made the shadows under my eyes feel deeper, heavier. Daniel was due home that evening, around 8 p.m. According to his last text, he'd be grabbing dinner at the airport before flying back. A simple message. Routine. Except it felt anything but normal. I sat at the kitchen table with a blank notepad in front of me. I needed clarity, something solid to hold on to. I wrote down everything I knew. Daniel left Thursday for a business trip to Chicago. Maddie stayed over Friday night. Saturday morning, I found Daniel's credit card in her purse. Daniel's location still showed him in Chicago. But something wasn't lining up. I thought back over the past few months. Maddie had been over more often lately, sometimes when I wasn't even home. She'd come by to check on the plants or drop off leftovers. At the time, it felt thoughtful. Now, it felt invasive. I remembered something else. A few weeks ago, I saw an Uber receipt pop up on Daniel's email. He'd forgotten to log out of our shared laptop. The ride had ended 2 blocks from Maddie's place. When I asked, he brushed it off. "Oh, I met a colleague there for coffee. She lives nearby." I hadn't questioned it. I trusted him. I trusted her. That morning, I did something I'd never done before. I opened Daniel's laptop. He had a backup drive set up to sync certain work files and folders. Most of it was boring, Excel sheets, pitch decks, photos of networking events. But there, buried in a folder titled Temp, I found a photo. It was blurry, taken quickly, but it was unmistakably Daniel, sitting across a small table at a dimly lit bar. Across from him, Maddie. She was laughing, head tilted back slightly, her hand resting on his. My chest tightened. My stomach dropped. I clicked for details. The timestamp read, 10:32 p.m., Friday night. But Friday night, Maddie was supposedly asleep on my couch. I closed the laptop, cold sweat gathering at my temples. Either she'd slipped out while I slept, or she'd never actually stayed the entire night. It was enough. I needed more, and I needed it soon. At noon, I messaged Maddie. "Hey, random question. Did you happen to find a card in your purse? I think Daniel might have misplaced one of his." It was bait. I already knew she had it. I just needed to see how she'd spin it. Her reply came quickly. "OMG. Yes, actually. I have no idea how it got there. I was going to tell you yesterday, but totally forgot. Maybe he dropped it at your house and it fell in?" A neat, perfect lie. I didn't reply. Instead, I picked up my keys and drove to the coffee shop near her apartment. The same place Daniel had that Uber ride end weeks ago. I sat in my car, parked discreetly across the street, and watched the door. My phone buzzed in my lap. It was Daniel. "Flight's delayed. Should be back around 10 now. Love you." I stared at the message, then turned my gaze back toward the coffee shop. 15 minutes later, Maddie walked out of her building. She wasn't alone. Daniel followed. He was wearing the same navy blue coat he'd packed for Chicago. No luggage. No tired jet lag look. No sense of guilt. They didn't touch, but they didn't need to. Their body language said it all. She leaned in close to whisper. He smiled the way he used to smile at me. I ducked in my seat. The truth had been there all along, just beneath the surface. Now it was undeniable. I didn't know how to react. My hands trembled as I clutched the steering wheel, knuckles white. I wasn't just betrayed, I was played. By both of them. I waited until they disappeared down the street. Then I drove home. That evening, Daniel walked through the front door right at 9:57 p.m., suitcase in hand, business casual clothes slightly rumpled. He kissed my cheek. "Flight wasn't too bad," he said, setting his bag down. I smiled. "How was Chicago?" "Busy. Met some great people. I'll tell you about it tomorrow. So exhausted." "Of course," I said softly. "Get some rest." I watched him head upstairs, calm and collected, like he hadn't been 5 blocks away with my best friend less than 12 hours ago. He didn't know I had seen. He didn't know what I knew. Yet, later that night I couldn't sleep again. My mind reeled with 1,000 questions. How long had this been going on? When did it start? Had he ever planned to tell me? Did she ever feel guilty? The image of her, my best friend, laughing with my husband haunted me like a shadow in the room. I got up and walked to the closet. I found the box where we kept our old wedding albums. Flipping through the pages, I found a photo of the 3 of us. Me in my gown, beaming. Daniel beside me, proud. Maddie, arms wrapped around us both, smiling like she belonged in that picture. A chill ran through me. I ripped the photo in half. I wasn't sure what I was going to do next, but I knew the story wasn't over. If anything, it was just beginning. Morning light filtered through the curtains, painting the walls in a pale yellow glow. Daniel lay beside me, his breathing deep and even, like a man without guilt. But I knew better now. I'd seen behind the curtain. I stared at the ceiling for nearly an hour, rehearsing the conversation in my head. Would he deny it? Deflect? Beg? Cry? Or would he just shut down? By the time he stirred, I was dressed and in the kitchen, coffee brewing. He came down, rubbing the back of his neck. "Morning," he mumbled, leaning in to kiss me. I turned slightly so he grazed my cheek. Subtle. But he noticed. "You okay?" he asked. I slid his mug across the table. "We need to talk." His brows knit immediately, instinctively. "What's wrong?" I paused for just a beat. Then I placed my phone on the table and turned the screen toward him. The photo of him and Maddie at the bar glowed under the kitchen light. For a moment he didn't speak, just stared, then blinked slowly, like his brain hadn't caught up to the damage. "Is that?" he started. I didn't let him finish. "Friday night, while I thought she was asleep on the couch." He leaned back in his chair, exhaled, and ran a hand through his hair. His voice dropped, quiet but defensive. "It's not what it looks like." My stomach twisted. Of course he said that. "Then tell me what it is, Daniel," I said, arms folded. He hesitated. "She just needed someone to talk to. She's been going through some things." I didn't want to say anything because I knew how close you two are. "Going through things?" I repeated, my voice sharper now. "Is that what we're calling it? You think I'm stupid?" Silence. And then, something in his expression cracked. Not remorse. Not guilt. Resentment. "Why were you going through my files, anyway?" he asked. I blinked. "That's what you're worried about?" He stood, pacing now. "Look, maybe I should have told you. But nothing happened. Okay? We met for drinks. Talked. That's it. Then explain your card in her purse." His eyes shot back to mine. "I what?" "Oh," I said, stepping forward. "So you didn't give it to her?" "No," he said too quickly. "Why would I do that?" "She lied about it. Said she found it here by accident. That it just fell into her bag." We both stood there, tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. He looked cornered, jaw clenched. Then I asked the question I had been avoiding for days. Are you sleeping with her? His silence was the loudest answer I could have received. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. It wasn't supposed to mean anything. My throat burned. My fingers curled into fists. How long? He hesitated. A few months. A few months, I repeated. How thoughtful of you to stagger your betrayal. She came on to me, he said. You have no idea what she's been saying about you behind your back. That caught me off guard. What? She told me things. Said you were unhappy. That you talk about leaving me. That you laugh at me behind closed doors. I laughed bitterly. So you slept with her out of pity? I was confused, he snapped. I didn't mean for it to go this far. You didn't mean to destroy a 10-year relationship? He didn't answer. Didn't need to. I walked to the counter and picked up a manila envelope I'd prepared the night before. Inside were printouts of every photo, every text I'd found since starting my search. I dropped it in front of him. I don't want excuses, I said. I want you out. His face went pale. Wait, what? You heard me. Today. Babe, please. Don't call me that. He moved toward me. Hand extended like that would somehow undo it all. Don't, I said coldly. You made a choice. Now live with it. He stood there for a moment longer, then turned, slowly walking upstairs. As soon as he was gone, I grabbed my phone. I didn't text Maddie. I called her. She picked up on the second ring, cheery as ever. Hey girl, what's up? I didn't waste time. I know everything. Silence. A long, stretching silence. I don't know what you mean, she said, her voice faltering. You had his card in your purse. She said nothing. I saw you two together outside your apartment. Friday morning. More silence. Then, quietly, I didn't mean for this to happen. Are you serious? I snapped. You've been lying to me for months. Sneaking behind my back. In my home. You smiled at me while sleeping with my husband. I'm sorry, she whispered. No, you're not. You're sorry I found out. She tried to explain. Something about being lonely, feeling forgotten, needing someone who understood her. All I heard was white noise. When she paused, I said the last thing I'd ever say to her. We're done. Wait. I hung up, and I blocked her. Daniel left that afternoon. He didn't take much, just the essentials. We didn't talk again. Not that day. Not the next. But I knew it wasn't over. Because betrayal doesn't leave quietly. The silence after confrontation is like standing in a burned-down house. The flames are gone, but the smell of smoke clings to everything. Daniel had been gone for 3 days. The apartment was still. Too still. No footsteps. No hum of his late-night TV. His side of the closet was empty. Yet, the air felt thick, like the echoes of betrayal hadn't finished settling. I thought cutting Maddie off would bring closure. That telling her we're done would be the end of it. But something tugged at me. A tension I couldn't explain. Like there was more. And I'd only scratched the surface. And then I remembered something. A text from months ago, back in January. She'd asked if she could use my address for something related to a package. Long story, she'd said, laughing it off. I hadn't thought twice. I trusted her. But now I wondered what she'd really meant. I dug through my inbox, searching keywords like shipping, Maddie, and delivery. Buried under coupons and bank alerts was a single Amazon confirmation. Shipping address, my home. Recipient, Madison Green. Order, a burner phone. My skin prickled. Why would she send that here? I clicked further, same address, different item. Prepaid debit card. Then another, a P.O. Box registration service. Always under her name. Always linked to my address. She had used me for more than just emotional leverage. I needed answers, but not from her. She'd already burned that bridge. So I turned to someone I hadn't spoken to in years, Tasha. An old college friend. She and Maddie had been tight once, but fell out over something petty. At least that's what Maddie told me. I found Tasha on Instagram, still living in the city. I sent a message. Hey, long time. Can I ask you something about Maddie? She responded within minutes. LOL. That's random. What did she do now? That line hit me. What did she do now? Turns out, Maddie had a history of borrowing people's information, using their names, addresses, even social security numbers, to sign up for things. Some scammy, some illegal. She used my info to apply for a business credit card. Tasha typed. I didn't even find out until I got a collection notice. She ghosted me. That's when I cut her off. I felt sick. Tasha continued. She's charming, but dangerous. Lies like she breathes. I asked if Maddie had ever mentioned Daniel. Tasha's response was instant. Wait, you're Daniel? I saw them together once. Months ago. I assumed they were a thing. That was the moment my stomach turned fully. It hadn't been a recent affair. It had been planned. And not just emotionally. Maddie hadn't just inserted herself into my life for friendship. She'd studied it, worked her way into it, built trust, just to bleed it. I went to the closet and pulled down the shoebox where I kept spare documents. Old leases, bills, tax forms. All stuff we never looked at. Inside was a bank envelope I didn't recognize. Inside that were 3 statements for a credit card I never opened. In my name. Charges to restaurants I'd never eaten at. Bookings at hotels I'd never stayed in. One charge stood out. A week at a boutique hotel downtown, under both her and Daniel's names. The dates? 2 months ago. That week, Daniel had said he was at a leadership retreat. I was numb, but it wasn't over. The final nail came when I logged into our joint bank portal. I hadn't checked it recently, trusting him to manage our shared finances. But there, under recent transfers, was a $4,000 withdrawal, labeled M. Green/refund for business expense. She wasn't just sleeping with my husband. She was stealing from me. I took screenshots, printed statements, made copies of everything. Then I dialed my lawyer. Do you want to press charges? He asked, cautious but serious. I paused. I hadn't cried. Not yet. The pain was still too raw, too complex. She committed fraud. I said, yes, I want to press charges. Because this wasn't just about a broken heart anymore. It was about being used. And I wasn't going to let her vanish into another lie. Later that night, I received a text. Unknown number. You told him, didn't you? My fingers clenched. Who is this? The reply came with an image. It was a selfie. Maddie, standing in front of a mirror. Dressed in the coat I lost last winter, the one I thought I'd misplaced. She was in my home. The photo was old. I could tell from the rug, which I'd replaced 2 months ago. But it didn't matter. She'd taken more than my trust. She'd taken pieces of my life. You were never going to keep him. You never knew how to make him feel wanted. I blocked the number, saved the screenshot, and I filed a police report. The morning of the court filing was crisp and quiet, like the world had paused just long enough for me to catch my breath. I had spent the last few days in a fog of paperwork, police reports, identity theft affidavits, bank documentation. I'd frozen my credit, flagged my name with fraud alerts, and had my lawyer start proceedings for both a divorce and criminal charges. But the worst part wasn't the legal mess. It was rebuilding who I was after everything she took. Maddie had infected every part of my life. She'd met my parents, sat across from my sister at family dinners, cried in my arms over fake breakups, and all of it, a lie. It was almost impressive. But she'd made one mistake. She got greedy. In her effort to keep me close, to manipulate Daniel and leech off our life, she left a trail. One I followed. I tracked her most recent location through a digital breadcrumb I never expected to find. An old fitness tracker. Months ago, she'd synced her smartwatch to my phone's Bluetooth by accident. I forgot to unsync it. Pinged. She was in a high-rise condo downtown. Rent far beyond what she should be able to afford, especially considering she'd told me she was between jobs. Armed with an investigator's help and a stack of evidence, I arranged for law enforcement to visit. Knock knock. Serve. She was arrested for multiple counts of fraud, identity theft, and misuse of personal financial information. I didn't go in person. I didn't need to, but I did watch the footage later, her face going pale as she opened the door to find 2 officers and a warrant. She looked small, cornered, exactly how I had felt the moment I saw my husband's card in her purse. Daniel, on the other hand, had gone quiet. He moved into a coworker's guest room, tried to keep a low profile, and texted me a week later. "I messed up. I'm so sorry. Can we talk?" I stared at it for a long time before typing back, "No, but you'll hear from my lawyer." He never responded. In the months that followed, Maddie's trial made local headlines. Not because she was famous, but because of the sheer extent of what she'd done. She had used 3 different women's identities, lied about being a freelance designer to access their bank details. She'd seduced not just Daniel, but a married man in another city. Her pattern was as practiced as it was predatory. During the trial, I was asked to testify. I sat in the witness chair under oath, looking directly at her for the first time in over half a year. She avoided my eyes. When I was asked how it felt to be betrayed by someone I called family, I answered truthfully, like grieving a ghost, because she never existed. Maddie was sentenced to 2 years in prison, with mandatory restitution. But even as the gavel fell, I didn't feel the satisfaction I expected. Justice isn't a clean emotion. It's complicated, bittersweet, like cleaning a deep wound. It stings, but it heals. Daniel sent one last letter. I never opened it. I didn't need to. I knew what it would say. "I never meant to hurt you." Or, "She fooled me too." Maybe even, "I miss you." But the truth is, you don't accidentally betray someone. You choose to look the other way, to lie, to keep choosing yourself, while tearing someone else apart. Instead, I chose me. I changed my phone number, moved apartments, started going by my maiden name again. Small things but meaningful, like shedding old skin. And for the first time in years, I took a solo vacation. No itinerary, no husband, no fake best friend tagging along. Just me. A book, a beach, a sunrise I could trust. And in that quiet morning light, I whispered something I hadn't said since it all began. I'm okay, because I was, maybe not whole yet, but no longer broken. Conclusion. Maddie thought she stole my life. Daniel thought he could leave and come back. But they both underestimated one thing. I didn't need to get even. I just needed to get free. And in the end, it wasn't about revenge. It was about remembering who I was before they tried to erase me. And that woman, she's stronger than